Peace, love, liberty, radio.
And the walls come crashing down as the war at home reaches your town. You have no choice, it's safe and clean. We all submit to the war machine.
So, some people want to expand the war machine. They want to expand the war machine to be a war on ride sharing and letting people sleep in your house overnight. I am not one of those people, but Bernie Sanders is, as is Hillary Clinton. The story that I want to get into is about a woman in San Diego who has run into some problems with the city council because, well, she operates a bed and breakfast out of her house, and, well, they don't like that too much. But I figured that, since people are talking about politicians and politicians tend to say stupid stuff, well, I would throw in a little bit of Bernie and Hillary for you. There's a story over at Reason.com that says Senator Bernie Sanders, the self-described Democratic socialist currently running for the Democratic presidential nomination, says he has a, quote, serious problem with car service company Uber because it is, quote, unregulated. Well, not so fast, Bernie. Feel the burn. They're not totally unregulated. And no, I'm not just talking about the self-regulation that they do. They actually are regulated. And I'll explain here in just a second. The article from Reason continues. It says, Sanders made the remarks in an interview with Bloomberg News. There does not appear to be any additional context to the quote, but for Sanders, there probably doesn't need to be. The fact that Uber is big, successful, recently valued at $51 billion, that's billion with a B, and relatively innovative is problem enough. The only way to solve that problem is with regulation, or more accurately, from Bernie's perspective, more regulation. You see, Bernie Sanders is wrong about Uber not being regulated. Uber is regulated. A spokesman for the company told The Hill that 54 different jurisdictions in which Uber operates already have regulations for ride-hailing services. That's just what's in place already. Cities like New York and states such as California have proposed and debated a slew of additional regulations over the last year or so. Uber, in other words, is regulated and sadly likely to grow more regulated over time. And how does this fit in to Hillary Clinton or Airbnb? Well, apparently Hillary blasted Uber and Airbnb and actually the entire peer-to-peer economy recently. The story covered by truthinmedia.com. And I hate when things like this happen. The website winds up freezing and then a pop-up comes up and it makes it difficult to read the article. But the article here from truthinmedia.com, it's actually from about a month ago. So early in July, former Secretary of State and Democratic presidential candidate Hillary Clinton gave an economic policy speech at the New School in Manhattan, which Politico characterized as, quote, an attempt to address the threat posed by Bernie Sanders' populist crusade without being pinned to a set of liberal proposals that will hurt her in a general election. During the speech, which her campaign promoted as a major policy address, Clinton parroted recent criticisms that have been raised by left-leaning politicos against innovative sharing economy startups, Uber, Lyft, and Airbnb, for brokering the assets and skills of independent contractors rather than hiring employees directly. Clinton said, quote, "I'll crack down on bosses who exploit employees by misclassifying them as contractors or even stealing their wages." Now, here's the thing, though. People that work for Uber and Lyft, or people who share their home through Airbnb, are not employees of Uber, Lyft, or Airbnb. Just like if you hire a 15-year-old that lives up the street to cut your grass, he is not your employee. You have contracted with that person to perform a specific task, and you pay them the agreed-upon amount. That is what makes one a contractor. Now, an employee, there's all kinds of weird legal things that one must meet in order to be an employee, or what makes one a contractor, etc. But the people that work for Uber, Lyft, and Airbnb, and it could be argued that nobody that rents their house through the Airbnb site works for Airbnb, but I digress. Those people are not employees of Uber, Lyft, or Airbnb. They are contractors. And I've had jobs before to where, like, I thought it was going to be I'm an employee sort of thing. Turned out they're like, well, we want you to be a contractor and this. And there was one particular job where it was going to be selling newspapers. And I went through the interview process, and I was told that I was hired. And they said, we'll call you for the date of your the date of your orientation. And then they never called me for a date for orientation. But come to find out, it wasn't actually going to be that I would be working for the newspaper as an employee selling stuff. I would be listed as a contractor. And then, then they would not have to provide any sort of benefits. There would not be a base salary. It would be strictly commission and this and that and a bunch of other things. And there are reasons why one would want to be a contractor, such as not having taxes stolen out of what you receive as compensation. And there are reasons that one would want to be an employee, such as knowing for certain that they're going to get to go to work next week unless they get told they're fired. And, with contractors, you don't necessarily have to say you're fired. And in some states, the way right to work or no right to work or whatever it is, like, at will, not at will, etc. There's various ways in which you are allowed to fire somebody that is your employee. So there's reasons on both sides, pro and con, and I'm not necessarily going to get into all of that. But Hillary seems to think that the people running Uber, Lyft, and Airbnb are exploiting people by classifying them as contractors. And I don't know if she actually thinks that they are stealing their wages, but she certainly alludes to that. And I'll read this quote again. Quote, "I'll crack down on bosses who exploit employees by misclassifying them as contractors or even stealing their wages." And there's a little bit more about Hillary hating the peer-to-peer economy. And then I'll get into the story about the woman in San Diego that's having problems with the city council over her bed and breakfast in her house. When we come back on Peace, Love, and Liberty Radio.
When her plush and comfy life suddenly and unexpectedly fell apart, Brooke and her dog Cloud set out to defy the odds. If this is a man's world, as they say, living on the streets is no place for a young woman. One day she awoke in the redwood forest and realized she had become a hobo, and would ultimately come to know exactly what it means to survive. How to Be a Hobo by Brooke Willett is available from Amazon.com and all major bookstores.
Hey, this is Michael Dean from the Freedom Fiends radio show. I've been working with computer programmer Derek Slopey to create Fiend Phone. I'm using Fiend Phone right now to talk with and record one of my co-hosts in real time. Take it, Davi.
Hey, this is Davi Barker, and I'm 1,000 miles away from Michael, but we sound like we're in the same room.
We sure do, Davi. So, Davi, please tell the nice people more about Fiend Phone.
FiendPhone is free, open-source software that opens up a global world of possibilities for collaborative, high-quality remote voice media production, and I'm digging it.
People can try the Windows beta version of FiendPhone right now at fiendphone.com. But we're also raising money to vastly improve FiendPhone and vastly improve independent talk media worldwide.
So go to fiendphone.com to help out. Who will build the audio roads? We will, with your help.
That's fiendphone.com. FEENPHONE.com. Foxtrot, Echo, November, phone.com.
FiendPhone. I never knew remote audio could be this good.
You're listening to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio with Darryl W. Perry.
Hillary did not mention any specific companies by name, it's reported. But she did say many Americans are making extra money renting out a spare room, designing websites, selling products they design themselves at home, or even driving their own car. This on-demand or so-called gig economy is creating exciting opportunities and unleashing innovation, but it's also raising hard questions about workplace protections and what a good job will look like in the future. There are well-paying jobs well above minimum wage, she says, when people drive, offer lots of flexibility in schedule, etc. That actually not from Hillary, that from Menlo Ventures partner and Uber investor Sean Carolyn, who emailed Reuters in regards to Clinton's speech. The New York Times noted that Uber currently faces a class action lawsuit in California over its classification of drivers as contractors, and that labor activists have argued that the sharing economy's innovative peer-to-peer business model is, quote, simply a way for companies like Uber to minimize cost, even as they maintain considerable control over drivers' workplace behavior. And there's a little bit more in this article. I'm not going to read this last long, lengthy quote in the article, but I'll post the link over in the show notes. You can read it at your leisure. So, again, how does this tie into the San Diego woman? Well, the San Diego woman was renting out her house. And, well, she now faces a hefty fine. And when I say a hefty fine, I mean a hefty fine. And in my voice, when I said hefty, the thing, and wimpy, hefty. Yeah, I'm talking hefty over here. The article comes from Vice, and they report, in the latest legal hurdle confronting modern-age home rentals, a woman in San Diego has been hit with a hefty $25,000 fine. $25,000 because the city claims that she failed to obtain the required permits to operate a bed and breakfast out of her home. 70-year-old Rachel Smith, a retired school teacher, contends she never served breakfast to travelers who rented her guest room, thus not meeting the technical definition of a bed and breakfast. And I love this. I absolutely love this, because I was thinking a while back to, thinking out loud to one of my friends that does run a bed and breakfast. And I said, I wonder if you could somehow, get around whatever legal loophole or, go through the loophole by, instead of calling it a bed and breakfast, calling it a bed and or breakfast, but you never actually sell breakfast, so then it would just be a bed, but just have that in the title. Or somebody could buy breakfast that did not actually sleep, have some kind of weird thing to where, it's very ambiguous whether or not you actually give people breakfast. So I guess technically it would be a bed or breakfast, and then, an asterisk after breakfast, and then put breakfast is never served. But Rachel Smith, who says she never gave breakfast to any of the people that rented her guest bedroom, says, I'm not running a bed and breakfast because I'm missing one of the major requirements, that is breakfast. Smith, who purchased her historic home in the Burlingame neighborhood of San Diego in 2007, did not actually rent out any rooms in her house until 2012. In May of 2012, Smith decided she had more space than she, her daughter, and her granddaughter needed. With her daughter's help, she set up an Airbnb account, advertised her guest room for $80 a night, with access to a kitchen, a laundry room, and the backyard. She told the San Diego Reader, I bought this home for my family to enjoy, but I still had these extra rooms. I thought how fun this house, this community would be for other families to come and enjoy. I guess I'm a dying breed, but I wanted to share my beautiful home with other people. Her neighbors did not feel the same way. Smith's apparent passion for entertaining friends and travelers reportedly rubbed some of her neighbors the wrong way. Smith's troubles began in September 2013. That's well over a year after she started renting out her bedroom, or the guest bedroom. A neighbor contacted a city councilor to express concern that she was operating a bed and breakfast out of her home. The council member then contacted the deputy director of code enforcement. An investigation was launched into the legal parameters of Smith's Airbnb activities. In the official complaint that Smith's attorney, Omar Passons, shared with Vice News, the primary concerns cited are security, overcrowding in a residential neighborhood, impact on our privacy, and impact on our home value. And this is something that has always perturbed me. The whole thing of home value. Now, on the one hand, people want a house that is affordable, that is not overly expensive because property taxes are based on the value of the house. So people want that to stay relatively low so that their taxes are relatively low. But yet at the same time, people want a high property value so that, well, I can sell it and make money. Ha, ha, ha. But that's one of those sort of, like, the sunken cost fallacy is really big in the real estate market. And the reason I say that is because it's not often, and yes, I realize that there's a segment of the population that does this where they'll buy a car because they know it will have a good resale value. But that's definitely not the majority of people. The majority of people buy a car they can afford, they run it until it can't run anymore, and then they buy a new car. Or what some people will do, if they've got children that are about to be of driving age, they'll run the car until, well, I can pass this off to little Timmy, and little Timmy will have a pretty reliable car. And then they, pass that car on to little Timmy, and then they buy a new car. Or little Susie, or whoever. You understand what I'm saying. Like, not everybody buys a car for the purpose of it will have a great resale value. Most people buy a car that they can afford and that they know is going to be reliable to get them from point A to point B as many times as possible so that it winds up being a quote-unquote worthwhile investment. So not everybody looks at houses the same way. So people look at houses, well, I need a house that it's going to have a good resale value. Well, why? Like, the whole point of buying a house is you're going to live there for a really long time. If you're not planning on living there for more than 5 years, you don't buy a house. It's not a good financial investment. So you should not be worried about resale value when you buy a house. So screw property value is what I'm saying, because you want taxes to be low, right? There's more on this when we come back.
The Doublespeak Dictionary by Leslie Starr O'Hara satirizes the marked difference between the ideal of we the people and the reality of we the elite, while offering an insightful glimpse into the clockworks of the totalitarian mind. Ever irreverent but never irrelevant, the Doublespeak Dictionary serves as a subversive and humorous but timely reminder that the emperor has no clothes. The Doublespeak Dictionary is available from Amazon.com and all major bookstores.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at weusecoins.com. That's weusecoins.com.
It is the year 91,001 BCE. Witness humanity's origins in Hyperchronius, a classic role-playing game for Windows PCs, with a story like no other game before. The liberty-oriented experience that is not to be missed. Go to zog.ninja to get your copy of Hyperchronius today. Use the code FPP to get $1 off. Hyperchronius, zog.ninja, code FPP.
You're listening to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com.
Now, one thing that it's not good for the value to be low on is Bitcoin. And I say that because, I want Bitcoin to be worth more dollars. I really liked the days when Bitcoin was up over like $500, $600, $700, $800. I liked those days. But now Bitcoin's down around $280, and, it's still good. Still good. Like the Homer Simpson, I think it was Homer. Yeah, when the barbecue, like the pig flew off the barbecue, it's like, just a little dirt, it's still good. And then it gets washed into the river, and he's like, just a little water, it's still good, it's still good. Bitcoin's still good. It's just a little dirt. It's $270, $280 a Bitcoin. It's still good. It's still usable. And you know what? I like being able to use Bitcoin because it makes transactions easier. And I like being able to find things that I can buy with Bitcoin. And, wouldn't it be great if there was a website you could go to that would show you all of the things that you can buy with Bitcoin? Like, yes, it would. And somebody made that happen. It is called spendabit.co. Spendabit.co. There are millions of products from thousands, possibly even tens of thousands. I've recently read something that said that there are over 100,000 merchants now accepting Bitcoin. I don't know how many of those are online, or how many of those have their products cataloged in Spendabit, but Overstock.com has their products cataloged on Spendabit. Go there. It's basically a Google for the Bitcoin economy. You go to Spendabit, and you type in what it is you want to purchase with Bitcoin. Spendabit will show you all of the products that meet your search criteria, and it will show you which companies you can wind up purchasing that product from. You click on one of the products, it takes you to that merchant. And if you are a merchant and you take Bitcoin, look into the merchant suite options that Spendabit has. Go to spendabit.co. Those products you can buy with Bitcoin. Some of them you can only buy with Bitcoin. Spendabit.co. So back now to the story about the woman in San Diego who is running into problems with the city council there in sunny San Diego, where, well, apparently they've got a problem that she's got extra rooms in her house that she decides to allow strangers to stay in exchange for money. The attorney, Omar Payson, said, quote, or rather the complaint from the attorney sent to Vice said the primary concerns, again, security, overcrowding in a residential neighborhood, impact on our privacy, and impact on our home value. The complaint states, quote, "We first realized that she was using her home as a business during a Memorial Day holiday, when we saw 4 men leaving the property with roller luggage, followed by a new shipment of guests about an hour later. I asked my husband if it was possible she was running a hotel." And I love the wording that they use. Because, again, I'm one of these big advocates that words have meanings. And the way they sort of use this word art, a new shipment of guests, as if they were delivered to her by FedEx or UPS or the Airbnb ground transport agency or some other like delivery company. Like, here's a new shipment of fill in the blank. Like, hey, here's your new shipment of toilet paper. Here's your new shipment of guests. Hey, I have a delivery for you. It's your new shipment of guests. It's absolutely ludicrous, the words that were used, but they use words specifically to make it sound as if it is worse than what it is. The complaint also expressed concern that cigarette smoke was drifting over from her patio into the neighbor's child's bedroom. Noise pollution was not mentioned in the complaint, and I've got a funny story about the noise pollution ordinance in San Diego. Back when I worked for an airline, I would fly out to San Diego quite often to visit my brother and his wife and my nephews. And there was one time when I had gone out and for some reason, like because I would fly non-rev, that's, airline employee, you're not paying for the flight, so you're a non-revenue passenger. So they fit you on a plane if they can fit you on a plane. And I would always look at the flights the night before. So on this particular day, I was planning to catch the first flight at like 6 o'clock in the morning. So before I went to bed, I looked at the flight. Yep, there's like 40 extra seats. I'm definitely getting on. I'll be back in Birmingham, middle of the day, and it'll be a good day. So I go to bed. I wake up. I get to the airport, and come to find out, well, there's 40 people on the non-rev list. What the hell happened? So I come to find out over a series of hours sitting at the airport waiting on one of these flights to finally get on, I'm talking with one of the gate agents, and well, the night before there was a flight that was delayed leaving because the plane was delayed coming into San Diego, and there's a noise ordinance that goes into effect. I think it's like 11:30, so no aircraft can take off after that time, thus, preventing noise pollution. So the airplane that was supposed to have left the night before, it's on the runway, and air traffic control calls over to the pilot and says, "Do you have both engines fired up?" And the pilot, not realizing why he's being asked the question, said, "No, I've only got engine number 1. I'm about to fire up engine number 2. And they don't use right side, left side. They say engine 1, engine 2. Engine 1 is the pilot side. Engine 2 is what I refer to as the passenger side. Pretend the airplane's a car. You've got the driver's side, the passenger side. Same thing. Driver side number 1, passenger side number 2. Says, "No, I've only got engine number 1 up. I'm about to fire up engine number 2. Air traffic control says, "Don't fire up engine number 2. You have to turn around, go back to the gate." Pilot says, "Why? What's wrong?" ATC comes back and says, "Yeah, if you had engine number 2 turned on, I could let you take off, but there's the noise pollution. Can't let aircrafts take off after 11:30, and it's 11:30 right now, so you've got to go back to the gate, and everybody that's on your plane has to get off, and they'll have to find somewhere to stay for the night." So Turns out I wound up being about 4 hours later out of San Diego than I wanted to be because of noise pollution. And, well, that's not one of the concerns here. Just, she's got a lot of people coming to her house, wah, 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 and she's making money. Well, yeah, she's now facing a $25,000 fine. There's more on this. It'll be in the show notes. You can read it for yourself. FPPRadio.com.